Thank you for joining us at Miniature Wargaming Lab. My name is James.
I'm Brian.
And now, Brian, I believe you'll be discussing a game that you've been waiting for a long time. What game are you going to talk to us today?
So, as I've mentioned probably every 5 minutes on every video that I do, I'm an Infinity player. But that was my first miniature game. I started back at the very early days of N2, which it was just second edition back then. And since then, I have been a very active player. Kind of slowed down in the last year, especially recently. But they just released a game called Code One, and that's what I'll be talking about today. So this is the book. It's much smaller than their other books, and it's not as hard as their other books, but there's a reason for that.
Okay, so what I know when I moved to Albuquerque, like on the East Coast, I had heard of Infinity, but I never realized like how big Infinity is along, in Albuquerque or out west. Like probably the biggest.
So out west, Infinity is one of the bigger games. In the Southwest, we have some of the biggest tournaments. In Albuquerque, we have the biggest tournament in the world, which is Rumble on Route 66. So Infinity has been a huge part of the gaming scene in New Mexico for a long time. So having a new game come out from in that system is pretty interesting. We had a big influx of players when we had Aristea come out, and now we have Code One right before, and soon, I think this month, we'll be getting N4, the newest edition of Infinity.
Right. So what is the theme of Code One? How is it different from N3 or N4, the main Infinity?
So we actually haven't really discussed Infinity. We've done a discussion on Aristea. So Infinity is based in the far-ish future, like less than 300 years in the future. The world's broken up into different factions, but everyone's on different planets now, so everybody has different systems. There's a couple alien races. It's more of your your high sci-fi kind of game where it's not grim dark. There's actually a lot of stuff based in actual science and stuff like that. So it's not science fantasy. Infinity is a skirmish game that focuses on reaction and tactics. Well, okay, and Code One brings that, kind of boils it down into a more simplified game. Infinity has been heralded as a very complex game with a lot of little rules that make up the bulk of how you play tactically. So Code One kind of brings that all together, tightens it all up, and makes it easy, like an access point for newer players.
Okay, so what do you need to play a game of Code One?
So Code One,
I bought Code One because
yes,
it was a skirmish game, and you sold me one. So what do I need, since I don't have any of the Infinity stuff? What do I need to play Code One?
So my selling point for Infinity is that it's low miniature entry point. Max you'll ever need is about 20 miniatures. Of course, you'll end up buying around 500, but you'll never be playing with more than 20 miniatures. In Code One, they cut that in half. They bring it down to 10 miniatures. For Code One, you'll need Corvus Belli licensed miniatures, but you can use any miniature as a proxy for another one as long as it's a Corvus Belli miniature. So if the miniature if you don't like that miniature and you see other miniatures that you want, but you want to play another faction that isn't that miniature that you bought, you could do that. But you'll need a maximum of 10 miniatures by Corvus Belli. As of right now, there's not as many factions as there are in Infinity in Code 1. But as time goes on, they'll be adding more factions to Code 1 to increase playability. So you'll need miniatures. You'll need a tape measure, of course. It's a miniature game. You'll need terrain. In the book, it goes over how much terrain you'll need depending on the size of game. Minimum, you'll need 2 large pieces of terrain and 10 small pieces of terrain, be it scatter or smaller buildings and stuff like that. You'll need 4 or 5 D20s and some markers to keep track of your actions and what's going on in the game.
What's the board size on this one?
The board size is 4x4 still, but it's
okay.
Yeah, it's still 4x4, just like Infinity.
Okay, because I bought that FLGS 4x4 that looked kind of Yujing. It was the warehouse area with like the Chinese writing on the roads and everything. So I wanted to make sure, like, is this a 2x2 game or like?
No, it's still 4x4, but you'll need less terrain. It's how New Mexicans play is actually very different from how a lot of other people play, and people have commented on that. Here in New Mexico, we like to add as much terrain as possible. If you can't go more than an inch without hitting terrain, it's not a table. Whereas in Spain, where this game is made, you'll have entire tables with 20 pieces of terrain that only goes up 2 levels. Here in New Mexico, we stack the table 5 feet high with terrain, and it's impossible to play through it because you can't reach your hand in the middle of it. But that's just how we play. So in reality, playing this game, it does not take as much terrain, but you will need some terrain.
Okay, so in the universe of games, like, who should play this? Where does this fit stylistically?
So a lot of people are interested in Infinity. Infinity has a really cool look. It's that nice sci-fi that isn't grimdark. It's has aliens, has really cool lore, but then they get into the rules, and they're blown away by all the tiny little rules. The interest in Infinity is larger than the people that play Infinity. People would love to play Infinity if it was simpler. This is where Code 1 comes in handy. People will be able to get into Code 1 a lot more readily than they would regular Infinity games. So it's more of it's a stepping point into Infinity. So it's for the people that want to play Infinity but don't like the complexity of Infinity.
Okay, so it's supposed to be the stripped down size and a lighter frame, less crunch in the rules. I have to admit, when I moved out here and you were talking about Infinity, and Etten sells Infinity stuff there, I was like, okay, so people playing the scene, let me go to YouTube and see how to play N3. And what the heck are you talking about? It was like, you need to watch like 8 videos to get that circular reference. So it's like, I get the idea, like when they interview the game creators. So I totally get it, the Japanese manga aesthetic for the models. Because like when you see, especially like the remotes, they look like touch comas from Ghost in the Shell, or Lodge comas from Arise. And so I was like, okay, I can get into that. I could make my little public security section 9 theme group. So let me look at these rules. Oh, man, that is out there. Even Code 1.
It's a little thick to get into, which is why Code 1 is amazing.
Okay. So what are some of the new features of this game?
So it has everything that Infinity has, but it's a lot more boiled down. So whatever Infinity has, Code 1 has, but a little bit less of, but in a good way. Where you think like stripping away 40K and you get Kill Team. Although Kill Team is a good game, I'd rather play a game of 40K than Kill Team, unless time differences. For Code 1 feels like a different game. It feels like a lighter version of Infinity, where I would rather play a Infinity game, but I'd rather play a Code 1 tournament.
Okay, I could see that.
Both of the games kind of don't have like story aspects, but so Code 1, I think where its uniqueness comes in is its ability to take Infinity and make it more accessible.
Okay. So how do the game mechanics work in Code 1? What am I looking at? D10s? Card
So,
deck?
like I said before, it's a D20 system.
D20.
Everything has a skill that you want to roll under, except for armor skill. Armor skill is the only roll that you want to roll over. So when you're rolling, so let's say we'll just go over shooting. I shoot you, and you're shooting back since you could see me. There's a feature in this game called ARO, which is automatic or active response order. I keep forgetting what that is. But it's an order that you automatically take on your opponent's turn to react to what your opponent is doing. So if I shoot you, you can shoot me right back. And that is what then that becomes an opposing roll. So I have a BS of 13. You have a BS of 11. I roll 3 dice. You'll get 1 because it's not your turn. You roll a 10, which passes because it's under your BS. And I roll a 14, a 16, and a 2. The 2 passes, but it's under your 10. So your 10 will actually go through and hit me. Now, in this game, there is crits. So if you are rolling for a 13 and you roll a 13, the crit automatically goes through and deals damage. That's a big thing that is changed in Code 1, is crits. You will roll, instead of whenever you crit, you'll take, the person getting hit will take 2 defense rolls, armor rolls, instead of just getting hit automatically. So it's harder to pass them because you're rolling more, but it's not like N3 where you automatically get hit and pretty much taken out.
So that would make, in this one, it'd make your guys more survivable.
Yes.
So you have less models, but they're going to make it farther in the rounds of the game, because I'll have 10 guys, they'll last just as long as the 20 guys in Infinity because of that mechanics, the probabilities in there. Okay.
Exactly. And so so how a turn goes is at the beginning of your turn, your first phase is the tactical phase. You count how many guys you have, and that's how many orders you'll have. And then, so how many, you could spend orders on any miniature. So let's say I want to spend 1 order on my guy with the combi rifle, and then I can spend another order on him, and then another order. Each order is cut down into 2 separate actions. You have a short skill and a long skill. You can either do 2 short skills or 1 long skill, depending on what you want to do in that action. So at most you'll have 10 orders plus some special orders depending on what kind of units you take. More specifically, like a lieutenant has a separate lieutenant order that they could use on themselves but nobody else. Regular orders can be used on anybody at any time.
Okay. That actually helps explain that one flow chart. I was trying to understand. It looked like the old computer programming language flows. It's like there's all these little boxes, like short order, but like a long order box. Okay, that explains that.
So that is definitely something to bring up, that although this game is made to be more simple than Infinity, the book is translated from Spanish. So sometimes the layout and the language are a little harder to understand, and that's been a big problem with a lot of their games. Now it's getting better, and this is as they get along as a company, it's been becoming better and better. There's still that disconnection between translations. So this book is kind of harder to read than, say, Oathmark is, or some of the games that we've gone over that we call beginner games. I would say this is a beginner game, but it will take a little more technical skill to read and understand because of translations and how Infinity is in the first place.
I was going to argue with you about there's a beginner game, but I was looking at Fallout. And so I think Fallout has as much technical complexity as Code 1, but the way they wrote the manual is better than the way they wrote the Code 1 manual. So I could see that. Okay. All right.
It's like a beginner plus.
Yeah, beginner plus. All right. So let's say how's a faction organized? So how do you pick your guys? If from Infinity we're going from 20 to 10, do you put a gang together the same way, or you just cut the points in half?
It's actually a lot more simple. So first off, you're going to choose what faction. Let's say I want to choose Pan-Oceania. Now in Infinity, Pan-Oceania has 5 subsections that you can choose from. In Code 1, it's cut down to just Pan-Oceania. Now they got rid of a lot of the more complex characters. The list of usable units has been cut down for simplicity's sake. So you have a lot less choices, but it's just as variable as if you're playing an Infinity game. So you have to have 1 lieutenant, and then everything else is based off of points. So a regular game is 15, a small game is 15 points, a large game is 30 points. Each miniature will range from 0.5 for a simple helper bot, all the way up to 3 points for something that's like a heavy infantry. So, and then you have SWIC, which is special weapons costs. So let's say your miniature has a heavy weapon. You can't spam heavy weapons in this game, much like Infinity. Each heavy weapon has a cost along with the point cost. Now, in a large game, you only have 5 SWIC. Heavy weapons like a sniper rifle or an HMG cost you 1.5 SWIC. So that kind of cuts into how much you can take. Yes, you could spam, but you will run out of points to spam pretty quickly if you want to do that. So there is a lot of variability. So you could take 10 of the smallest of the cheapest units, but you're going to have a lot of points left afterwards, and it's not going to be as effective. So you really want to look at how your weapons, your heavy weapons, are going to fit in, and how your quote-unquote cheerleaders are going to fit in, your order generators, along with the people that are going to be doing your more technical work, like capturing points and activating consoles.
So how much can you customize this, each squad?
So customization comes in there's not like actual customization. So each unit has a list of different loadouts of the unit. Each loadout has might have different skills, different weapons, and different equipment. But that's it. So like you have to you pick a profile, and that profile can't be changed. So where the customization comes in is choosing the different profiles.
Okay. So is there a campaign system associated with this game?
So Infinity has always had a problem with campaigns. This is a good tournament game. I've been in campaigns. There's been worldwide campaigns for Infinity that have actually affected the lore of the game. But there's always been problems with it as a campaign game. So I'm going to say no. There is not a campaign system for this game.
There might be a section of the book called campaign system, but that's not really a campaign system.
I have ran campaigns. I have made my own campaign games for Infinity. I've done everything I could to Infinity, and I just think to get the most out of Infinity, take it as it is, play as a one-off game. If you want to make a more narrative game, that works, but I have a problem making it into a campaign game and have it effective.
Okay. So in that regard, are there scenarios included?
There are scenarios. So the scenarios are what are considered tournament scenarios. So in regular Infinity, each year they release a season, an ITS, which is Infinity Tournament System. They release a packet of scenarios. Some of the scenarios you'll find in the book, other scenarios that are brand new, but those are what are used in tournaments. These are offshoots of those, or pretty much copies of those previous tournament scenarios. So I think there's 5 or 6 of them. Really good. They're all set off of 10-point systems, so the max you could get is 10 points. So it's they're really good. So it ranges everywhere from kill your opponent to capture these 3 points and hold them for 3 turns. So and I don't know if I can't remember if it's in this book, but I know there's a scenario called tic-tac-toe where you have a tic-tac-toe board pretty much set up, and you have to go activate the different beacons to connect 3 in a row.
Okay, so both sides are moving across the board, hitting. Okay.
Yep.
So what is this game missing?
Biggest complaint right now, and the biggest thing that it's missing, I think I mentioned it before, is factions. Right now, I think there are 3 or 4 factions, and as they release faction boxes that you can buy that are exactly what you need to play Code 1, and you buy the box, it is everything you need to play that faction of Code 1. They're waiting to, once they release those, then they release the rules for those for Code 1. So, I play Nomads. Nomads right now are not playable in Code 1. So, take my Nomad miniatures and say they're Pan-Oceania, which is heresy, but that's beside the point. But I could do that. That's what's missing, is the playability of other factions. I think we'll be seeing this game a lot more in the Infinity scenes as soon as everything is playable.
So you don't see this at Nova Open? Because I know the Infinity guys, when you go to Nova
Well, by the time Nova Open is open again, probably will.
Oh, it's I know they get their own little space up top, separate from
Yeah.
everyone else. So until every faction's in there, I don't know if they'd ever accept or adopt Code 1.
I don't see it in the tournament scene until everything is usable in this. They've been focusing on N4, so the thing with Corvus Belli is that they don't hold themselves to a timeline. Because they are a small company, they want to produce everything in-house. They want to print everything in-house and keep themselves small and as effective as possible. So instead of keeping to a strict timeline, they more have general release dates and a general timeline. So instead of rushing things, they like to go through and play test and really boil down their stuff and really make sure that what they're releasing is quality products.
Okay. So, where do you hope this game goes?
I hope to see it made into a tournament game where Code 1 games are about so a 30-point game, which would equal about a 400-point Infinity game, would takes about an hour and a half. Where a regular 200-point Infinity game or 300-point Infinity game lasts 2 hours. So I would rather play a 3 to 5 round tournament of Code 1 in a day than a 5-round Infinity tournament in 2 to 3 days. Because then I can play in 2 tournaments.
Well, that's interesting because Kill Team was supposed to boil down a 2-hour game of Warhammer to 45 minutes, but they cut the board size down.
Yes.
You got fewer models, they're individually controllable, but you're playing on a 30 by 22. So Code 1 still takes up the same footprint as an Infinity. No, I guess that's fine because if we did this at Nova Open, you wouldn't have to change the room.
Yeah.
The 4x4s for your N4 games, which will come out, would be the same 4x4s as for Code 1. So that would help move that along. Okay. All right, so the final 2 questions. Why should you play this game?
You should play this game if you really, really like Infinity. I know I have a lot of people asking about Infinity, especially if they play other miniature games. They're looking to move on from 40K or Age of Sigmar into a sci-fi game, or looking for a more non-grim dark science fiction game. I like to point them to Infinity because I like Infinity, but it's complex. So if you're interested in Infinity, this is a really good stepping point that isn't as dense and complex as Infinity. I wouldn't say this is definitely for the first-time miniature game player, but this is definitely for somebody that's looking to get into something that isn't 40K or AOS.
Okay. Well, I already like the half-size squad because when I travel, that means for the 20 miniatures, I'm bringing both halves.
Exactly.
So I can bring Eugene and Pan and Oceana or O12.
That also means that they could release that. Well, they're releasing boxes. You buy the box, and that's it.
So I know you guys have had problems getting it from the distributor, which is why I haven't bought any of the Code 1 boxes. But I like that. I know Fantasy Flight's doing that with the new Star Wars Armada, of where here it's not a starter box. It's more like the Games Workshop start collecting boxes.
Yes.
Of like, well, here's a heavy weapons guy, here's a helper bots, and everything in between. Here's a balanced force in a box ready to go. Because I look at like the Infinity collection you guys have, and there are lots of problems with your distributor, but it's like, okay, there's a giant robot, 2 guys on a motorcycle, some homeless people with guns.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of Ariadna.
Yeah. So, all right, so why shouldn't you play this game?
You shouldn't play this game if you're looking for a very simple game.
This isn't Zona
even
Alpha.
though this is a simplified version of Infinity, taking a step down from Infinity doesn't even reach 40K. Just the amount of small technical rules and technicalities and tactical stuff that goes along with Infinity, even cut down, is still dense. So I said beginner plus. By that I would mean you've played games and you really like Infinity. So this is for the beginner Infinity player. So if you're not interested in Infinity, if you're not looking for a complex tactical miniature game, then there are plenty other options for you.
Well, when I was looking at thinking about sci-fi skirmish games that don't, let's say, Fallout, dystopian future, Reality's Edge, or This Is Not a Test. You like that
Mm-hmm.
cyberpunk dystopian future. Kill Team Necromunda, really dystopian future. Uh,
Yes.
you look at Infinity, like, oh, everything's fine. That things are fine. It's just we're just fighting because we can. Like,
Espionage and high technology. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not dystopian.
no, like we all have cars, television.
Coca-Cola.
Kids go to school. Things are fine. Got a retirement plan.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that is a good point. That you look at a lot of games and it's dystopian future. Everything's mutated. Everything it's post the bombs. It's everything is war. Infinity is a really cool universe because there's battles, but no one's fighting mass battles because that's not a thing that we do. We fight battles and we send a small team to go extract information, and they're going to meet another small team because we don't want to announce that we're having wars.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you go down like the Osprey Games collection, and you go down like Last Days, in a zombie apocalyptic world, Scrappers, an environmentally apocalyptic world, Zona Alpha, an apocalyptic world in this particular. It's like, man, you guys are really stuck in like the dystopian theme. There is all right. Well, I
it
think that wraps it up for Code One. I already have a book. I'm just waiting for distribution. Because
Yep.
as we always say, support your friendly local game store. So I've been waiting for my FLGS to stock Etten Games to stock Code One.
Me
So,
too.
all right. Well, thank you for joining us at Miniature Wargaming Labs. I'm James,
I'm Brian.
and we'll see you next time.